Zohab Zee Khan. What's going on? How are you? How are you on that scale from 1 to 100? Are you chilling? Are you chilling near the 1? I really hope not. Are you chilling near the 100? Oh, I really hope so. Are you chilling somewhere in the middle? That's G2. Wherever you happen to be on that scale, thank you for coming and chilling with me. Thank you for clicking that button and hanging out with my face. I really genuinely appreciate it. You guys are absolute legends. Thank you for all the comments on the last video. Really appreciate it. If this is the first time that you're clicking on one of my videos, thank you. Welcome. If you don't know who I am, my name is Zohab Zee Khan. I am a performance poet, motivational speaker, workshop facilitator, and a dude that's talking to you on a camera right now. And the reason that I'm talking to you on this screen right now is because of the coronavirus. Because everyone seems to be in quarantine or in isolation or practicing social distancing, and what that means is I can't go to my gigs and I can't go to my performances and I can't come into schools. So what that means is, for the next little bit, I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but for the next little bit, to make sure that I can still spread that beautiful message of poetry, I'm going to hang out with you on this little screen. Thank you for spending some time with me. Cool. If you already know who I am and you already watched the previous video about the brain dump, one of my favorite things, to get all those things out of your brain and dump it on a piece of paper. If you've already watched that video, have you done it? Have you done the brain dump? Have you done the brain dump today? If you haven't done the brain dump, make sure you do the brain dump. But let's chill for the next little bit. What we're talking about today is what makes a poem a poem. That's a good question. What makes a poem a poem? Everyone has a little bit of a different definition of what makes a poem and what the definition of a poem is. So I looked it up in the Cambridge dictionary. I think it was Cambridge or some fancy university, right? I looked it up in a fancy dictionary, and the fancy dictionary said, a poem is a piece of writing in which words are arranged in separate lines, often ending in rhyme, and chosen for their sound and for the images and ideas they suggest. I'm not really sure what that means. So I have my own definition of a poem. For me, a poem is one or more words, that's it. You know, as far as I'm concerned, a poem can be a poem because a poem says it's a poem, right? If there's a poem just hanging out, he's just chilling there, and this, like, I don't know, tree rocks up and is like, hey, what's up? What's going on? You look like a bunch of words. And the poem's like, whoa. Homie, I am a poem. And the tree's like, nah, you're a bunch of words. And the poem's like, nah, I'm a poem. Who is that tree to tell that poem that it's not a poem? As far as I'm concerned, a poem is a poem because a poem says it's a poem. A poem is a poem because a poem wants to be a poem. Because a poem, for me, is one or more words, that's it. As long as one or more words exist, it's a poem. That's why I think you're a poet. That's why I think every single human being that has ever been fortunate enough to let words out of their mouth is a poet. That's why I think every single human being that is fortunate enough to get pen and paper and put them together and let words dance on their page is a poet. As far as I'm concerned, you are a poet. As far as I'm concerned, I am a poet. As far as I'm concerned, every single person that is fortunate enough to be watching this video and let words out of their mouth, they are poets. You are a poet. You are absolutely a poet. You may not be a good poet. You may be a rubbish poet. You might be the worst poet ever, but you are still a poet as far as I'm concerned. Poetry for me is one or more words, that's it. And you might be thinking, yo, that's a really basic definition of what a poem is, and you'd be absolutely correct. I definitely think that's a super basic line of poetry. That's really setting the bar really low. But as far as I'm concerned, it's still a poem. But to set the bar a little bit higher, you gotta work at your craft. You gotta get a little bit better and better at it. And the way to get better at something is to practice it. And then when you finish practicing it, you practice it. And when you finish practicing, you practice it. And that's how you get better at poetry. I got into poetry from non-traditional forms. I got into poetry. Some of my favorite poets are people who aren't necessarily considered poets. Some of my favorite poets are famous people from way back, you know, people who gave passionate speeches. You know, some of my favorite poets are sports people. Some of my favorite poets are hip hop artists and rappers, right? My favorite poet when I was growing up was Muhammad Ali. And if you don't know who Muhammad Ali is, woo, you are in for a treat. Muhammad Ali was the heavyweight champion of the world. He was a boxer back in the day, a while back now. And Muhammad Ali used to say poems before fights, you know, and that's one of my first interactions with the different style of poetry. I always thought poetry was that roses are red, violets are blue, and that kind of stuff that I would find in books. But no. Poetry is one or more words as long as you speak it. Poetry is that rhythm. Poetry is something that we do every single day. And that's why I think poetry is the most important thing in my life. Okay, maybe food. But after food. Am I talking too fast? Clearly, I'm very, very passionate about poetry. One of my absolute favorite poems of all time comes from Muhammad Ali. It's also considered one of the shortest poems of all time, or if not the shortest poem of all time. And Muhammad Ali, when he was giving a speech in front of a bunch of university students and they asked him for a poem, Muhammad Ali came up with this and he performed this in front of all these university students. He said, me, we. And that's a poem. And one of my other favorite poems by Muhammad Ali, let me think about it, what was it? Got it. So before one of his fights with George Foreman, Muhammad Ali was like, you know, just talking to the press, and he goes, I wrestle with an alligator, I tussle with a whale. Handcuffed lightning, I threw thunder in jail. Just last week, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean, I made medicine sick. And that's where I got to know poetry in a performance way for the very first time. That and hip hop and rap, that was my favorite things as a young kid. And the reason I'm telling you about Muhammad Ali and the reason I'm referring to Muhammad Ali and him being one of my favorite poets is because a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of Muhammad Ali and think, oh yeah, that guy's a poet. A lot of you may, but a lot of you may not. And that's what poetry is for me. Poetry is that expression of your soul. Poetry for me is about getting words out of here into people's ears. That's what poetry is for me. Poetry is about expressing yourself, and poetry most definitely is about letting other people know about you. That's what it's about. Let other people know who you are, because only when you let other people know who you are can we learn from one another. Only when you learn about other people can we get a little bit better. That's what poetry is for me. And that may not be the most correct definition. That may not be what you find in the Cambridge Dictionary. You know what I mean? But for me, that's what poetry is. Poetry is about expressing yourself. However, poetry does most definitely have some common features that run through it. Poetry usually has rhyme in it, has rhythm in it, and has meter in it. Rhyme, rhythm, meter, amongst other poetic techniques. And I'm going to be making more videos about different poetic techniques and stuff like that. So stick around, hang out. Other aspects of poetry also include, it almost always has a meaning. It also almost always has a message that it wants to convey to the other person, to the reader or the listener or the consumer of your poetry. So when you're writing poetry, keep that in mind. What do you want to convey to your audience? What do you want to convey to the people that are listening to the words that are leaving your mouth or leaving your pen being put onto the page? They're really, really important things to think about. Cool, so that's me almost done for this video. Thank you for everybody that's been supporting my last couple of videos. I really, really appreciate it. Everyone that put a comment, really, really appreciate it. Please let me know what you thought about this video. Please let me know what you think poetry is. Do you agree with my definition? Do you reckon, no, poetry is something else actually? Whatever you want to tell me poetry is, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you did the brain dump. Please let me know if you did the brain dump. If you haven't done the brain dump, go do the brain dump. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say brain dump, go find the brain dump video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me while we're chilling doing this thing. Hit that notification button too, so you know when my new videos come out. Make sure you hit that like button, ding, and let your friends know. If you happen to be a teacher who isn't going into school right now and has students at home, send them this video. If you are a parent and you have kids at home right now, send them this video. If you're a school kid hanging out, man, I miss hanging out with you. Like legitimately, I don't even know what's the hottest dance on TikTok at the moment. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm still stuck on that whoa thing. Cool. Make sure you like, subscribe, let your friends know, put a comment down below. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, this has been really, really cool. I'm gonna have a little bit of a dance. Have you had a dance today? Let's have a dance.